All right. Welcome, Professor Wyatt, to my well-labored project, Better Access, Making Family Time Crisis and Counseling Agency More Accessible to Disabled Survivors. I am Giovanni Jacobs. So, according to a national survey conducted last year, 860 women of 860 women with physical disabilities were more likely to experience physical or emotional abuse at the hands of husbands, living partners, or family members, and the abuse lasted longer for women with disabilities than for women without disabilities as well. That's why it's important, for me anyways, for an agency like Family Time to provide equal opportunities to access services. Women with disabilities often face barriers when seeking domestic services, removing physical along with attitudinal, saying that right, barriers does not have to be a daunting task. Best practices such as believing the victim are already in place in an agency like Family Time. But it needs to be applied to all women, including those with disabilities. We need to ensure that we're not inadvertently discriminating against this demographic. So what's the problem? What's the analysis of the problem? The Family Time entrance layout does not provide enough moving area for a wheelchair using client. Long story short, there is quite literally no ramp to enter the premises of the agency. I've been there for a couple of months now, and it's one of the weirdest things to me to show up 3 times a week and look at the building that I know a lot of clients really use, and it's important for them, and just think that maybe 1 or 2 clients or more, obviously looking at the numbers, could potentially be turned away or be discouraged anyways from using the facility because there's no wheelchair ramp. So I think that would be something that should be immediately addressed. And then there's also no additional formats available for outreach and other materials. So, if you're blind, if you're deaf, if you speak another language, or the Spanish they do touch on, but all these other barriers exist that if you wanted to learn more about Family Time and wanted to learn more about access to the services, you would not be able to. So I just think that's really unfortunate, and it's probably not as inexpensive of a change as some in the change system might think. We'll get to that. So here's my intervention hypothesis. By making Family Time Crisis and Counseling Center more accessible to disabled domestic violence survivors, we could potentially recruit, accommodate, and keep more clients from this historically underrepresented demographic in a more effective and ethical manner than we have in the past. So here's our organization and the participants. So like I said, we're talking about Family Time Crisis and Counseling Center, and they provide services and programs, classes for domestic violence clients. There's also a shelter that's not at this particular site, it's off-site, and it's undisclosed area. And that site, the shelter does have a ramp, but for the women that want to get other services, like see a social worker, see a counselor, they have to go to the agency, and there isn't any. And I just think that's just really unfortunate. Okay, so part of the initiator system identifies the presence of an issue and bring it to the public or agency notice. I'm counting myself in that system, because I brought it up to my supervisor, and she was kind of like, oh yeah, there's no ramp for the agency. And I just thought, yeah, seems pretty obvious to me. So, and I'm sure maybe 1 or 2 clients have brought it to the agency's Maybe they have. I'm not sure. I haven't been told that, but I know I would speak up if I was a client, and that's why I I want to be in this field, so I want to consider myself an advocate, which is why I spoke up. So I'm putting myself in the initiator system. And then we have the change agent system. They serve as the committee, the task force to guide the change efforts in its early stages, make approvals for referrals for wheelchair ramp changes in agency brochures. And then you have the actual implementing system, the staff and the volunteers who will carry out the intervention. So the next question is, what approach or combination of approaches is most likely to achieve the desired change? For family time, I thought it would be best to look at two options, program and project. So the program approach, the organized activities is intended to accomplish goals and objectives. Overall, tends to be continuing and long-term in nature. So as you can imagine, the wheelchair ramp would be long-term, like that would be a permanent fixture. And then with the project approach, similar to the programs approach, is that it's smaller in scope and there's a deadline and more flexible in design, typically made permanent if deemed successful and valuable. An example of that may be family time may hire a sign language interpreter on a trial basis to determine the need of it, or how effective it is. Strategies and tactics. So change almost always involves the allocation of scarce resources. Decisions about strategies must take into consideration whether the resources would be allocated willingly or whether someone must be persuaded to make the allocation. With that in mind, I think one of the most effective strategies family time can implement for changes is by having staff, board members, or volunteers, someone who has a disability in any of those categories. Insights from women with disabilities may help identify potential obstacles in the project proposal and any other blind side that the agency is missing to better serve this demographic. Evaluating intervention. So the chief program officer, who happens to also be my supervisor, would be responsible for overseeing the project's execution and delivering evaluation reports. She would utilize the project's objective, results, goals, process objectives, and activities as a guide to ensure that all tasks and activities are completed on time and to an acceptable standard of quality. So a key question, two processes or two types of evaluations can go down for this intervention. So process of evaluation, key question for this is, were physical barriers to the agency removed for disabled clients? Pretty straightforward. Was the wheelchair implemented? Was it built? Was it made for the agency in a certain time frame? Clients benefit from process evaluations also because they demonstrate how a program's objective or effect was accomplished. And then you have the outcome evaluation. Has there been an increase in disabled women being able to access services at the facility? Are we tapping into more of these women in the community? We know they're there. There's a large number there. Are we seeing that we're able to help these women on a larger scale? In conclusion, this project aims to successfully meet the needs of disabled clients who come to family time for assistance. A strategy for change was developed, which included generating a hypothesis for intervention, a change plan, a proposal. And I really believe that this framework helps social workers, generalist social workers, build a foundation or use a foundation for creating lasting and effective change on a wide scale, macro level. And with that, I thank you for listening. I hope I got the point across. This was a very interesting project, but I actually learned a lot. So I'm really excited to say that at the very least. So thank you, Professor Wyatt, for listening, and see you later.